They lived in fear every single day. Families torn apart, neighbors slaughtered, homes burned to the ground. The shadow of death hovered over every field, every street, every home. In the heart of the Japanese occupation, even the smallest mistake could mean the end. Villagers clung to life by the tiniest signs: the flight of a bird, the bark of a dog, the stir of a rabbit in the grass. And yet, even nature could betray them. When it failed, there was no mercy. There was only death. Life in the village had become a careful performance. Every step, every sound, every movement was measured against the invisible threat that lingered beyond the hills. Villagers no longer worked the fields freely. They moved in small groups, glancing over their shoulders, scanning the horizon for any sign of soldiers. Children no longer ran or played. Their games had been replaced with whispered lessons from their elders: how to move silently, where to hide, and what signs in nature might mean danger. Birds in the morning, dogs in the yard. Even the twitch of a rabbit's ear became messages the villagers had learned to read. Meals were eaten quickly, in hiding, and water was drawn in silence. Each creak of the bucket a potential signal to enemies. Families slept in shifts, so that someone was always awake, listening, waiting, hoping the night would pass without footsteps or shouting. It was not bravery that kept them alive, it was desperation. Each villager understood that a single mistake could erase their entire family. Over time, they began to rely on the smallest clues from the world around them. The flight of a bird could save a life. The absence of a dog's bark could mean doom. Humans had become students of the animals, learning lessons they had never wanted to know. And yet, despite all precautions, there was no guarantee. Even the most careful eyes could miss a movement in the fields. Even the most attentive ears could fail to hear the sound of approaching soldiers. Life had become a delicate balance of observation, intuition, and luck, and every day brought a new test of survival under the shadow of unrelenting cruelty. The villagers had begun to notice patterns they had once ignored. Birds would scatter from the trees without warning. Rabbits would dart across fields at odd hours, and dogs would grow restless, their ears perked, eyes fixed on the horizon. At first, these signs were dismissed as coincidence. But as days turned into weeks, the connection became undeniable. In the dead of night, a sudden chorus of barking would send families scrambling for the nearest hiding spot. Children clung to their mothers, and fathers pulled them silently into the shadows, hearts pounding with fear. A flock of birds taking flight could mean soldiers were approaching from miles away, their presence invisible but deadly. Some villagers began to test the signs, moving only when animals remained calm and hiding when they did not. A rabbit bolting from the underbrush became a warning. A bird flying in a strange direction became a signal. The villagers learned to read these messages as carefully as any map or letter, but trust came with a price. One misread sign could be fatal. One evening, a small group of villagers left the edge of the forest too soon, thinking the birds had returned to their nests. They stepped into the open fields, and the Japanese patrol was there, waiting. Screams echoed as the soldiers struck, and the survivors learned a cruel lesson. Nature could guide you, but it could also deceive you or fail you entirely. From that moment, the villagers understood the precarious balance of their lives. Animals were no longer just creatures in the fields. They were the difference between life and death. Survival had become an art of observation, intuition, and trust in the instincts of beings that were far smaller, far more alert, and far more alive than themselves. News from the neighboring villages arrived in whispers, fragments of horror carried by those who had escaped. Families wiped out in a single night. Homes set ablaze while people screamed. Fathers dragged from their fields. Mothers and children slaughtered. The villagers listened in silence, hearts tightening with dread. The stories were too familiar, yet too unimaginable. Each tale etched itself into their minds, reinforcing a single truth: the Japanese soldiers would not hesitate. Death could arrive at any moment, and mercy was unknown. The air itself seemed heavier, as if the wind carried the memory of burning homes and broken bodies. It was then that the villagers clung even harder to the patterns they had begun to notice in the animals around them. Birds taking flight in unusual flocks, dogs restless at night, growling at shadows no human could see, rabbits and small creatures darting across fields at times when no one expected them. Fear sharpened their instincts. Every animal became a teacher, every movement a message. The villagers watched and waited, learning the language of the world around them, because they had no other choice. Survival now depended not only on hiding from human cruelty, but on interpreting the subtle signals of nature. But the weight of terror was crushing. Children trembled at every distant sound. Mothers held their babies tighter, whispering prayers they weren't sure anyone would hear. And as the stories of slaughter spread, the villagers realized a chilling truth. Even the cleverest observation, the keenest attention to nature, could not guarantee survival. Death was patient, and cruelty was relentless. Fear had become a teacher, and the villagers were quick students. They no longer waited for signs by chance. They began to observe, interpret, and act. Birds in the trees, once ignored, were now carefully watched. The sudden flight of a flock could mean approaching soldiers. The direction they flew became a warning of where danger lurked. Dogs, too, became silent partners in survival. Their growls and restless pacing were studied, their behavior analyzed like a map of the enemy's movements. Even the smallest creatures, the twitch of a rabbit's ear, the scurry of a rat, were noted and remembered, forming a network of warnings that humans alone could no longer provide. Families assigned roles. One person would watch the skies, another the fields, another the forest edges. Each animal's movement became part of a fragile system designed to give them a chance. Just a chance to survive. But trust was never absolute. Sometimes animals were wrong, and the consequences were immediate and brutal. Villagers learned to move slowly, to hesitate, to question even the signals they had come to rely on. Every decision was measured against the ultimate threat, the soldiers waiting beyond the tree line, ready to strike without warning. In this village, life had become a constant dance with danger. Humans had lost control of their own survival. It was no longer skill or courage that mattered. It was perception, patience, and the willingness to let the wild guide them through a world where cruelty ruled, without mercy. Even the most careful observation could not guarantee safety. One evening, as shadows lengthened across the fields, a small group of villagers decided to move toward the river to fetch water. The birds perched above were silent, the dogs asleep in their yards, and the rabbits remained hidden. It seemed safe, too safe. They stepped into the open, hearts pounding, believing the world itself had given them permission to move. But the silence was a trap. Japanese soldiers had already advanced, hiding among the trees, waiting. The villagers froze for a moment, realizing too late that nature's warning had failed them. Screams pierced the air. Mothers clutched their children. Fathers lunged to protect them. There was no mercy, no negotiation, only the cold, brutal efficiency of the soldiers. The animals that had once guided them had been wrong, or perhaps had sensed nothing at all. Those who survived ran blindly, stumbling over fields and through underbrush, their breaths ragged, hearts breaking, praying that the next warning would not fail them. In that instant, the villagers understood the cruel truth, even when they read the world perfectly, even when they trusted every sign and signal. Survival was never certain. Death waited patiently, and cruelty required no reason to strike. The few who survived the night moved like shadows through the ruins. Every step was calculated, every sound a potential threat. Villagers hid in shallow ditches, behind burned-out walls, or in dense thickets, clinging to life by whatever chance the world still allowed. Animals had become their only allies. A bird's sudden flight could signal soldiers approaching from one direction. A restless dog might warn of a patrol nearby. Even the twitch of a rabbit or the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush could dictate where it was safe to step. The villagers learned to move in sync with these tiny guides, their survival depending on attention, instinct, and an almost supernatural awareness of the natural world. Yet the strain was unbearable. Hunger gnawed at them, exhaustion weighed down their limbs, and the fear of discovery never left. Every sound, distant footsteps, a snapped twig, a whisper of wind through the grass, could be fatal. Families separated, and in some cases, parents abandoned children in panic, hoping the smallest chance might save someone. Even as they relied on animals for warning, they understood the cruel truth. The wild could guide them, but it could not fight. It could not protect. Survival was still theirs alone to fight for, against an enemy that showed neither mercy nor restraint. And with every passing hour, the village shrank further until only the desperate, the cautious, and the lucky remained, clinging to life by the faintest threads of hope. Even the most vigilant villagers could be deceived. One evening, a small group decided to move toward the river for food and water. The birds remained silent, the dogs seemed calm, and the rabbits stayed hidden. It appeared safe, too safe. They moved cautiously, hearts pounding, convinced that the signs of nature had given them a clear path. But the silence was a trap. Japanese soldiers had anticipated their route, hiding in the shadows, waiting. The villagers froze, realizing too late that the natural warnings they had trusted had failed them. Screams erupted as the soldiers struck without hesitation. Families were torn apart. Children were pulled from their mothers' arms. Fathers tried to protect them, only to fall under swift, brutal blows. The animals, once their guides and protectors, were powerless against human cruelty. Those who survived ran blindly, stumbling through the fields and forest, their breath ragged, hearts breaking with grief and terror. They understood a painful truth. In a world ruled by cruelty, even perfect observation could not guarantee life. Survival depended not only on reading nature, but on luck, and luck was fleeting. The village lay in silence, broken and hollow. Smoke had faded, but the memories of fire, blood, and terror remained. Survivors moved cautiously, their lives forever marked by cruelty they had no power to stop. They had trusted nature, relied on instincts, and clung to hope. But the price of survival was seared into their hearts. And yet, the story of suffering did not end with the occupation. The enemy had left, but a new storm was gathering from within. Rival factions, old grudges, and the struggle for power would soon erupt into a civil war that would claim the lives of countless innocents across the land. In the next episode, we will uncover how the battle for China's soul tore families apart, destroyed communities, and plunged an already wounded nation into another era of bloodshed. If you want to witness the full story of survival, betrayal, and the human cost of war, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter.